Hello everyone, welcome to 3ddesignacademy.com. In this lesson, we will continue with part 14 of constructing the car project. Okay, so in the previous lesson, we made the body side, but I think I'm going to make a little upgrades to the surface, because right now it feels a little flat compared to the picture. So I think I'm going to be adding a little bit more section to the body side. Okay, so in order to do that, let's take a look at an image. So if you see this image right here, you'll see that the body side has a little bit of crown. And let's see if I can get something a little bit better. So, and if you see this image, to zoom in, you'll be able to see that there's a little of, I guess, a flat fillet and a flat. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to divide the surface into two sections. Okay, so I'm just going to turn this off, move this to the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy paste this curve and put it somewhere where I think this curve needs to be placed. So if you see this image right here, you'll see that it's about, let's say, about like 2/5 of the way between this this feature line and this light catcher, the beginning of the light catcher here. So let's put it somewhere around here. Now it doesn't really indicate it in the body size, so I'm just going to put it, just approximately somewhere here. And what I'm going to do, maybe I'll just move it just a hair. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to project this curve onto this body side. Okay, so let's see. Oops. So I'm going to say project this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract a curve from that surface. So let's see if I can just duplicate it. It's got a span. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a fit curve. And I'm going to say degree 3. That looks good. The deviation is 0.005, so I think that's pretty close. So I think that's what I'm going to use. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing down here. Now let's see. I think this body side is a little bit too long, so I think I'm just going to chop it up somewhere in the middle. So same thing over here. This curve I no longer need. So I think this one, let's see. What is this curve? Okay, so I don't think this is a curve that I can actually use. So I'm just going to copy paste this curve again. And probably, well, because we still need a feature line here, so maybe I'll do something like this. Okay, I think that's good. And again, from the side view, I'm going to project this curve onto here. And I'm going to say hide unselected, and I'm going to do a fit curve right here. So degree 3, and let's get rid of this surface. I don't need that anymore. Now, because this surface actually needs to come out just a little bit in order to give that a little bit more volume on the body side. So I'm just going to pull this curve out just a little bit, like a mil or two maybe. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a freeform blend. I'm going to say position on both sides. And I'm going to add a little proportional crown. I don't know how much yet, but let's see. So I'm just going to pick this curve here, and select. And I'm going to choose this arrow to make sure that it's actually going this way. I'm going to do the same thing, fit curve, choose the fit curve there. And I think this is the newly generated fit curve here. So I'm going to do that. Also, okay, so right now, because of the volume of the surface, right now you'll see that there's a little bit of baby back shape. So I'm just going to pull this out, grab the curve. Because we have this history, I can just pull it out a few more mils, and let's give it a little more volume like that. Okay, so you'll see that there's a little crease, but that's okay because we're going to give a big fillet right here. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to make a little adjustment to the curves. And let's say, actually, I think I'm going to pull it out a little bit more. So A little bit more. Maybe there's a little too much. So I'm just gonna put just a little bit like that. And I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so and the second thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make some adjustments to the curve. So you'll see that there's a little bit of section difference between this surface and the light catcher right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to grab this curve. I actually grab the CV on the curve, and let's see. I'm just gonna hide all the curves besides this one and this one because right now it's a little bit distracting. So I'm just gonna say layers. I'm gonna just assign, and I'm gonna say hide. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna double click on this box, and I'm gonna say curve. Just pick the default layer, so make the interface a little bit simple. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these CVs right here, both the top and the bottom one at the same time, and I'm going to move them slightly inward, just slightly, so that I'm not messing up the highlight too much. So you'll see a little bit of like a bow shape. That's okay. And I'm gonna do that a little bit more on the to the bottom side. Just gonna move it just a little bit so that we have a little bit of more coherent section. Now I'm gonna make sure that, you know, this little rainbow shape is not too much. I think I can do a little bit more, just a little bit. Yeah, I think that's probably the limit. And I think that's pretty good. And I think the shape is a little bit more complementary to each other. And that's exactly what we want. Okay, so next thing I'm gonna do is, let's see, I'm going to test out if it fits a little bit better. So right now I actually got rid of this curve here. So I'm gonna put the curve layer back on, and I'm gonna say project. And I'm gonna project this curve, turn that back off. Okay, and I'm just going to delete the surfaces and create this again. So freeform blend, position, and I'm going to reduce the crown value to 0.005. Click here. I'm actually going to do that, change that to default. And same thing over here. And change the volume. Okay, let's check the highlight. Yeah, highlight actually doesn't look too bad. You'll see a little progression towards the bottom, but I think that's okay. Yeah, I think this looks pretty good. Okay, so next thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to do a surface fillet. Let's see, chord G2, and let's see, let's start with 100 and see how big that's going to get. So I'm going to say edge align both sides. I think that's a little bit small. So what we want to do is to mimic this volume. And one of the ways to check it, now it's a little bit different from the front view to the side view because it is actually not a straight line from the rear view. So I'm going to just try to project it. So I'm going to change the color because right now it's a little bit different. So from the side view, you'll see that this door cut line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a curve that mimics what appears here. So I'm just going to make that into degree 2, just make it simple. And I'm going to add a little bit of section like that. So stretch tool, like this. And I'm going to use it to project onto this surface right here. So just grab all the surfaces to project, and that's gonna, that's gonna indicate like what shape or how much volume that we actually need to put in. So from the front view, you want to compare this volume to the volume that you see here. So, however, I think it's a little bit too flat. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, well, not flat. I think the fillet size is a little bit small, so I'm gonna add make it a little bit bigger. 200, and let's actually compare it to from the rear view, because I think this is not the best picture. So from the rear view, so we have the image like this. Okay, so we have that image right there, and let's compare it to the body side like that. So now, because the image is flipped, we're not going to get an exact representation of this. But I do notice that I think we should add a little bit more volume. So if you say this and compare to this here, so maybe try to make the perspective a little bit similar. So I think it needs a little bit more, slightly more volume. So what I'm going to do, maybe just a hair. So I'm just going to move this outboard like this, just a little bit. And let's see how that compares. So yeah, I think now it's becoming a little bit more similar. However, I do think that this lower portion needs to come up a little bit too. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab this lower curve here and move that out quite a bit. Because if you compare it to here, yeah, I think it needs to move out. You'll see that this point, and if you look at this point and this point, and this point is, I think it's actually a little bit outboard. At least it feels like it. So I think I need to move it a little bit out. And while I'm doing that, looks like the history is a little bit broken. I'm gonna grab this curve and move that out too, because we want to keep the volume similar. Okay, and I'm just going to grab the bottom one like this, and let's compare. I think the perspective is similar, and I think I still need to make a little bit more adjustment. But I think we're getting pretty close. Actually, let's change the shader. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Maybe I'll just pop the middle one on just a little bit more. Add a little bit more section. I think that's pretty good. Yeah, I think this angle is similar. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And we got a nice nice highlight running through, and it's, you know, there's a little rainbow, but I think we need that. And you'll see a nice progression from the top to bottom. We got I think, decent volume, so I think I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, all right. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is, I think I'm actually well, I don't need the well, maybe I do. Yeah, I'll just keep that on. So I'm pretty happy with this, how the highlight is flowing from here to here. It's not the exact same I guess a section, but it's a similar enough where, you know, the highlight is not doing something funny. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a fender, or start of a fender, over on this side. So in order to do that, I'm first of all going to undo this fillet. And I'm going to add a curve. Actually, before we do this, so let's check the shape of the highlight. So if you see this highlight, you'll see that it's sort of, it's a little bit of straight, a fillet, and it feels a little bit more straight here. So what I think I need to do is, I actually, instead of doing just one shape from here to here, I think I actually need to divide into two and put a fillet between the two. So because we have a sort of a, well, it's not exactly a break, but something similar to it, we also need to divide, instead of doing one sheet from here to here, we actually need to divide this into two pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a curve, and let's compare the picture. So I think the center is somewhere around here. So looks like it's about halfway between this point So if you compare, if you put like a spot here or dot here, I think it's a halfway distance between here and here. So I'm gonna do the same thing over here. So I think I probably need to, let's see, well, maybe it leans more towards side. Yeah, I think this is a pretty good spot. Well, let's try it out and see how it compares. Actually, maybe this is a better indicator. So it looks like, yeah, I think this is not bad. Maybe just a little bit to the left. Okay. So let's see. I'm going to project the curve straight on here, and I'm going to actually let me just delete these curved surfaces because we no longer need them, at least for now. So I'm just going to draw trim. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a curve from here to here. I'm just going to make that into degree 2. And let's see, we want to follow this shape as much as possible. So it looks like the core of the fillet is running here to here. So let's see. So I think it's just, the height is about like maybe 1/3 of the way from this feature line to this feature line. So I'm going to use a stretch tool, maybe lower this just a little bit. And because there's a little bit of it's a little bit of corner or a little bit of volume, so I'm going to do that and see if I can create a rail. So 1 and 2 for now, like that. So curve segments for here. Oops, that's not working. Okay, so I'm going to bring this over to this side, and if you use Control Alt, you can also snap it like that. Okay, so that's better. And I think the volume looks pretty good. We'll have to compare it, but you'll also notice that the light catcher is actually ending here, which means that this feature actually also needs to end up here. So I'm going to move it like that, but you'll see that this probably has an excessive crown, so I think I'm going to have to adjust it a little bit too. Now we also need a surface on top, so I'm going to also use by rail. So 1 and 2 on the top side too. And right now it's not creating a surface, so I'm going to say rebuild on rail 1 and 2, and I'm going to bring this over here. Now with this one, I'm not quite sure where it's going to end up, so I'm just going to put it somewhere here. I think it just, it has a nice shape, but I think it also depends on the how I'm going to shape the fender over here. So I'm just going to leave it like this, and if I need to make an adjustment, I can always do it later. Okay, so this one, however, I need to make an adjustment now, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say extend like that. And I'm going to, because right now this line is a little bit more straight, I'm going to grab a curve and I'm going to make it a little bit more straight. Now I'm going to add a little bit of crown, but not too much. So I'm going to say degree 2, and maybe this point needs to be a little bit lower. Maybe not. Not sure. Maybe I'll just make it a little bit lower, just a hair, and I'm gonna add a little bit more crown, like that. Okay, that looks good. So I'm gonna say project. Now, because we need to, I would like to make this as clean as possible. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to trim this, and I'm going to rebuild the surface from that. So right now I'm going to use a square 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you'll see. Okay, so I'm going to say, oh, that's not good. Okay, you'll see that this is actually going in and out, so I don't want that. So let's see if I can just do a fit curve, degree 2. I mean, it's not fitting perfectly, but I think that's okay. So I'll just move it a little bit more forward. Okay, so I'm going to use square again. 1, 2, 3, 4, but this time I'm going to fit it to that curve right there. And also you'll notice that this is degree 6, so I'm going to turn on explicit control. Looks like it can be achieved with degree 2, and this one it does require degree 3, so that's good. Okay, and much cleaner than before, and I'm going to delete the real surface like that. And we have a nice clean surface with highlight, pretty decent highlight. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Okay, so now you'll notice that because it's actually not touching here, you'll see that there's a giant hole here. Now, in order to close that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to also project a curve here. Shader here. And I'm going to create another surface that connects between the two. Okay, so I'm just going to do a trim right here. Good, and I'm going to use the square tool. 1, 2. I don't need the curve anymore, so I'm just going to delete that. And I'm just going to connect. Oops. Why? Oh, okay. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, okay, so here's a problem. So you'll notice that I cannot make a square even though there are 4 edges. The reason for that is there's actually a space between these 2 surfaces. So I would have to update that before I can continue. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete these the construction of these 2 surfaces, and I'm going to move the fender outboard, at least the outboard edge of it, so that both this surface and this fender meets up nicely. Okay, so in order to do that, I'm just going to bring the curve layer back because we already have history. We don't have to do much. So I'm going to move this curve back to the default layer, hide everything else. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the pivot from the side view. Oops. Okay, it looks like there's a little bit of lag there. So I'm going to say move the pivot, and I'm just going to snap it right here. Make sure you're snapping on the curve itself. I'm not snapping over on this feature right here. I'm actually snapping on the curve like this. So I'm just going to snap it like that. Okay, that looks good. The reason why we're doing this is because we're trying to snap the curve onto this exact point without moving it from from the side view. So now that we have this point right here, so you'll see that it's a little bit of it's on the curve itself. So I'm going to go back to the side view, and I'm going to snap it now on this curve or this surface edge right there. So now it moved. Now it's these points are connected. We'll see that right here. Well, you'll also notice that this point didn't move, this curve didn't move from the side view. Now, the only problem is right now these surfaces also need to be updated. So let's do that next. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab the align tool because we delete the history. I don't need this curve anymore, so I'm just going to hide it. Okay, so align, position. So I'm going to grab this surface and grab onto this. And instead of right now, it's going all over the place. So I'm going to say partial. And I'm also going to do blending. I'm going to say 1. The reason I'm doing this is because of this CV, set of CVs also need to follow. So if you look at this, oh, well, right now it's too little of a move to maybe make this significant. So I'll just turn it off. Okay, right now it's got 6 degrees. I don't like that, so I'm just going to change that degree to make it a little bit lower. It looks like 4 is going to work wonderfully. And the same thing over here. Just gonna grab it here, and looks like that fit well. I'm gonna make sure that this is also this edge also stayed positional, so it looks like it did. And now we can actually put a square here. So I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3, and 4, and now it creates a square. Okay, so let's see if I can even go lower. 2 and 2, that looks good. And that looks pretty good. So in the next step, I'm gonna probably add some fillets, and yeah. All right. Okay, so that's it for part 14, and we'll continue in the next tutorial. And thank you guys for watching.